Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your attendance as we proceed through the glorious Srimad Bhagavatam. We are covering Canto 1, Chapter 9, verses 25 to 28, the passing away of Bhishmadev. Om Jnanatime Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurulminitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru, Shri Uttapada Kamalam, Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha, Shri Rupam Sagrajatam, Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam, Tam Sajivam, Satvaitam Savadutam, Parijana Sahitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padan, Sagana Lalita, Shri Vishakan Vitamscha, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namastute, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya, Panchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Bevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sarva Shastra Piyusha, Sarva Vedeka Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sarva Lokai Kriprada, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu, Kalidando Didaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, Srimad Bhagavatam. O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are a sun which is risen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pathaya Prema Varsha Sharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading, one attains transcendental bliss, for your syllables rain pure love of God upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madekabandhu Matsange Madguru Man Mahadana Manishtaraka Mad Bhagya Manananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. Sadhu Sadhu Tadahin Atini Chotataraka Hanamun Chakda Chinmam Premna Hritkatayo Spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplift the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest, Mahatma Throat, accompany of pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmadyasya Yatonvayaditarata, Charte Swabhigna Swarat, Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye, Muyanti Yatsuraya, Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo, Yatrati Sargom Risha, Damna Swena Sadani Rastakwakam, Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute twin, the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance and destructions of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in far land, seen on water. Only because of him do the material universe temporarily manifest. By the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, for he is. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in a transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Rayana Paisha Sabya Kalavasminyuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagi Upadrita. O learned one in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives, they're quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayan Namaskritya Narachevam Narotamam Devi Sarasatim Vyasam Tatoi Chayam Udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance unto the personality of God Narayan, unto Narayan, which is the supermost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasa, the author. Savai Pumso Parodharmo Yato Bhaktira Dokshajaya Hoitukya Pratyata Yayatma Suprasidati. The supreme occupation dharma of all humanity is that by which man can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayatyo Savairagyam Jnanam cha ahitukam, by rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Padanti tattvavidas tattvam yach gnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth calls non-dual substance Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shru Shru Shoshadadanasya Vasudeva Katha Ruchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees are completely free from all vice. Great service is done. By such service one gains eternity for hearing messages of Vasudeva. Shranvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Yatantastaya Vadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nastaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuktam Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance in the classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praise or transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Let us receive some feedback from last week's lesson, chapter 9, verses 18 to 24. Please share in the chat what touched you, what you took home, what you wrote in your notebook, so that you could remember. Srila Prabhupada said, writing means remembering. And we want to try to remember at least few points from every lesson, every session that we, doesn't matter whose class or whose lecture you hear, it is important to take at least something home so that this way you can grow and to memorize 1 or 2 points which you can use and leverage over for inspiration, for guidance, for remembrance, for sharing. So very important. And we also encourage everyone to do that so that you can share. It is one of the devotional practices to share Krishna consciousness with others. So when we come together, this is what we should be doing. We should be sharing what we have read, what we have heard, what we are doing in our services. This is association. It's exactly like when materialists meet. Then immediately when materialists meet, what's the discussion? Oh, Ukraine, Russia fighting, shame, it's unfortunate, how can they do this? Oh, COVID. So the whole, the discussion, the news is triggered when people meet and they start to discuss about these topics. When devotees meet, then we should be discussing what we heard, what did we read yesterday, what we heard from other devotees, what realizations we got. So this is a very, very important devotional practice that we need to cultivate. It stops us from prajalpa, from gossip, and this pleases Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says when devotees come together, they relish discussing together. Right, so Hemavati Radhika said, okay, yes. We are blessed to be in an illustrious lineage. We should have faith. Yes, very important point. They are competent, brilliant, and expert. And by their mercy, we can surrender more and more. Very, very, very important point. And it cannot be emphasized and stressed. If we go through all the acharyas in our line, we will find they are extraordinary personalities. I mean, super extraordinary personalities. I remember when Govardhan Prabhu was giving the class on Lord Nityananda's appearance day, and he was mentioning about Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which also triggered my memory that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was such an exalted personality. When he was in Vrindavan, he would sit outside and he would compile his writings, and it would rain all over Vrindavan. And even when the Muslim ruler heard about Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he wanted to come and see. So when the Muslim ruler came to the scene and it was raining, he had his umbrella and everything. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was busy writing his Bhakti Shastras. And around Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it was not raining. But everywhere else, it was raining. And this proved to him that this is no ordinary person. Imagine you walking out in the rain, and where you walk, no drops touch you. No doubt, people will say, wow, you're special. So this is how, if we go through every single acharya in our line, we'll see they are super brilliant. They are super competent. They did so many amazing feats. They all had mystic powers, 8-fold mystic perfections. They all had a direct relationship with Krishna. Krishna would appear to them in dreams, to people directly. They were extremely learned in the scriptures. They had amazing adventures with Krishna. They were in many difficult situations, and mystically they were redeemed from the difficult situations. For example, we find Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when Vibhishana attacked him with his mystic powers to kill him, it backfired. So in so many ways we can see and we get inspiration when we understand, and more so is all these personalities are not just souls, conditioned souls who have become perfected beings, but most of them are liberated souls in Krishna's pastimes coming to this material world, serving Lord Chaitanya. And not only are they liberated souls, but they intimate, very close, the immediate associates or immediate to the associates of Lord Krishna in the spiritual world. Direct associates of Radhavani, servants of Radhavani, the Manjaris, Sakhis, very intimate. And that is extremely rare. So for us, by some good fortune, by Prabhupada's mercy, to be aligned and to be connected to such an illustrious lineage, it is rare. And when we understand it and appreciate that we are connected to such a line, and what we're receiving through Srila Prabhupada is the blessings, the mercy, the knowledge, the wisdom, the realizations, the internal and inner meanings, depths, qualities of Krishna and Radharani. So therefore, we should not underestimate our good fortune. Madhachana Siddhi says, the Vedic knowledge is perfect, and that perfect knowledge is what we need to know to perfect our life. Yes. Another very important point. The Vedas are beyond mistakes. They are coming from Krishna, who's perfect, therefore the Vedas are perfect. Now, when we have that faith, as well, then we will we will accept what the Vedas are saying. In the beginning, we may doubt and we may clarify our doubts and question, but then at some point we accept whatever the Vedas say, we accept and we move on. We apply it in our life and we grow. So another important point. Vasaraj Prabhu says, we should accept tribulations reverses as Krishna's mercy. Very difficult, but true. And we mention one reason why is because when you surrender to Krishna by chanting the holy names, even one time, then your karma is personally coming through the hands, divine hands, the merciful divine hands, the compassionate, merciful divine hands of Krishna, and administered directly to you. So if something comes and Krishna takes your karma and he looks at it and then he gives it to you, that's his blessing. He touched it. He glanced at it. He thought about it. It's not normal karma. It's Krishna karma. And if Krishna decides, nope, let's minimize it. He normally minimizes every karma. But if this one, he says, okay, let's discard it. He may discard it. He may find that there's nothing in your karma, and yet you need something, but it does, in your karma, it says you're not supposed to get it. Krishna will say, okay, we'll just give it to him. Because he needs it for his service. No problem. So both the good, the wonderful times that we have in Krishna consciousness and the challenging and tribulations and reversals that we have in our life in Krishna consciousness must be accepted as Krishna's mercy. And right now, we find that the devotees in Ukraine, Russia, they're going through this test. They're going through this test to see if they're able to see tribulations as Krishna's mercy. And those who can see tribulations as Krishna's mercy and pray to Krishna deep within the heart and say, thank you, Krishna, you are minimizing the reaction. It's all due to my past misdeeds. I will continue to worship you. Then Dayabhak, they become rightful inheritors of the spiritual world. What more do we ask for? So it's a very, very important lesson that we have to learn. And we will get plenty of opportunities to apply. Nalini Kandaprabhu says, Vedas is our mother and tells us everything about our Supreme Father. It's perfect. We must accept and understand. Yes. And in the beginning stages of bhakti, knowledge is of paramount of importance. Knowledge about ourselves, knowledge about the material world, knowledge about Krishna, knowledge about relationship, knowledge about the spiritual world, it is extremely important in the beginning stages of bhakti. Before we can become pure devotees of the Lord, before we can even become devotional, we need to develop knowledge about the Supreme Lord, because you cannot love someone without knowing. Love follows knowledge. The more you are inspired by knowledge of the Supreme Lord, the more you will begin to love the Lord. Shamananda Prabhu says, thanks for nourishing us with Srimad Bhagavatam nectar. We see how these exalted persons show us not only how to live, but how to leave the body as well, like Bhishma Dev, Srila Prabhupada, etc. We are eternally indebted to them, as nowhere else do we get this type of knowledge. I totally agree. And here's another point that, somebody may say, but how can you say Krishna consciousness is the best? Well, because it has the best. It has the most extensive knowledge of Krishna. It teaches you the most extensive aspects of how to live in this world, how to come into this world, how to live in this world, and how to leave this world. Which other scripture teaches you Garbhadan Samskar? Which other religious principle teaches you, or religious culture, spiritual culture teaches you how to prepare your consciousness before conception. And you don't just get, like one paragraph of it. No, there's pages and pages and pages. You can write a book. One of my devotee friends has written a thick book just on Garbhadan Samskar, one activity. And the Vedas are extensive in every facet of life, especially how to die, which is the most important activity in one's life. Imagine scripture covers every facet of life and leaves death, which is the most important part of your life because it's going to dictate your future. And at death, whatever you did throughout your life is going to dictate what happens at death. And Srila Prabhupada was the one who boldly came to present Krishna consciousness. And you'll find no other person on this planet talks about becoming free from birth, death, disease, and old age, besides Srila Prabhupada and his followers, or the followers of Lord Chaitanya. Going to the West and telling people you can become free from birth, death, disease, and old age. That's bold. And Prabhupada personally taught us how to die. So yes, we are again very fortunate to know this. When we have knowledge, it enlightens us. The word enlighten, it illuminates. So when you have more illumination, when you have more light, you can see more clearly. And it enlightens. It lessens the weight, the burden of material life. It makes your life more light. It lightens your heart. You become stress-free. Like children, they're light-hearted. Their heart doesn't have so much of the anxiety of bills and payments, etc. They're light-hearted. So, and wisdom, knowledge really enlightens us. Amavati Radhika says, go to be unflinching devotees. Go to be unflinching devotee, knowing no one but Krishna is our protector. We must pray to remember Krishna at the time of our death. That's perfection. We see this through Bhishma's wonderful example, showing us how to die, and also our Srila Prabhupada teaching us. We all going to die. Sorry to inform you. This is guaranteed, stamped. And because we're all going to die, every birthday we celebrate, we are 1 year closer to death. And we may not see our next birthday. We may not see our next year. We may not see the next month. We may not see the next week. We may not see the next day. We may even not see the next hour. We may not even see the next minute. This is the reality. And we have to accept this. And if that is the case, we should be prepared. And therefore, we should always be praying to the Lord to please accept us. Please allow us to remember him. Please allow us to be part of his adventure instead of our more like disadventure in the material world. Rasaraj, the Lord is pleased when addressed as a son of Nandamaj, son of Yashoda, love of Radharani. Nice point. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, if I recollect properly, mentioned that if you want to call upon Lord Chaitanya, then the secret is link him to his mother, Jai Sachinandan. When you say Jai Sachinandan, then the Lord becomes very happy, because not only are you calling him, but he remembers his mother. And because of that loving relationship, then the compassion, the mercy flows. So your point of calling the Lord with names linked to those who are very dear to him is very, very wonderful. Bhavana Prabhu says, I love the order with which proceedings, if putting Yudhishthir on the throne. It's so nice to learn that Bhishmadev wanted to witness the enthronement of the kingdom of virtue. This proceeding, I see it as so important. The way of the dressing of the chariots, everyone on the way to enthrone Yudhishthir. The whole process is so marvelous. It's a marvelous victory. Yes. And today's lesson is also going to expand on enthroning virtue, on ruling this world with virtue, on living a virtuous life, what it means. Every single one of us, every single person, whatever their position is meant to lead a virtuous life, a dharmic life, a religious, a spiritual life. What does it mean? In today's purports, Prabhupada extensively covers such amazing detail. So stay tuned. Hemavati Radhika says, Krishna's position never changes. No one is equal or higher. He is most lovable and his devotees love him more. And his devotees' love for him moves him. Yes. And contemplate on that. Imagine we know someone that has no equal and no greater. That person that has no equal, no greater, we know him. And he is being searched out by every spiritual or spirit soul in this world. Everyone is seeking for Krishna, and we know a little about this Krishna. And if there is no equal and no greater than Krishna, means that there is no force, there is no power, there is no ability, there is no talent, there is no compassion that's equal or greater than Krishna. And when we know that with firm faith, and when we realize that, or the more we realize that, the more we will become fearless. Mother Lash, when we fully depend on Shri Krishna in all circumstances, then we guard ourselves against misidentifying ourselves with the material world, which is the root cause of our fall down. Yes. Prabhupada says the skin disease, this misidentification, very difficult to come out of. And we really need to culture, develop, cultivate this dependence on Krishna. And not as a parasite, we covered, not as a parasite, but really be able to use our abilities, understanding that it's all Krishna's desire and will. Gopana Prabhu says, I see similitude to Yudhishthir and Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva was not satisfied with what he wrote about Vedas, that he grieved and was specified by Naradji. While on the other hand, Yudhishthir is specified by Bhishmadev from his grief of the loss of so many living entities and relatives. Yes. And we are also in the similar situation. We're also grieving. And our rescuer, our guardian, our savior is no other than Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So just as Vyasadeva was saved by Narad Muni, as Yudhishthir is saved by Bhishmadev, we are saved by Srila Prabhupada. Let us proceed. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback. So we are covering verses 25 to 28. Bhishmadev instructs Yudhishthir about various dharmas, purusharthas with historical examples. This section is also there in the Mahabharata. And we are, after Bhishmadev have glorified Krishna, Bhishmadev's words inspired Yudhishthir to get some instructions, and Krishna also inspired Yudhishthir to ask. Amidst all the millions of sages, Yudhishthir is presenting questions and Bhishma Dev is asking. Now, what is interesting about this dialogue that we're going to cover is consider the circumstance. Let's consider Bhishma Dev first. He's on his deathbed. He's on a bed of arrows. He is pierced, as we mentioned, so many arrows you cannot even put your finger in between two arrows. Would he be in pain? And would he be the appropriate person to ask philosophical, religious, pertinent questions to? Consider Yudhishthir Maharaj. Bhishma Dev is about to leave his body. What questions would you be asking someone that's about to leave? So Yudhishthir's questions at this point of Bhishma's leaving are very, very important questions, not only for him, but for the whole of humanity. Krishna just apparently placed Yudhishthir Maharaj into bewilderment so that this could happen. Because it wasn't that Yudhishthir Maharaj did not know. He was Dharmaraj, he was the epitome of Dharma. But it was Krishna's desire that Bhishma Dev speaks for our benefit, for the benefit of humanity, for the benefit of all, the whole universe. So very, very important. And more important than hearing directly from Bhishma Dev, which we are, is really hearing Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purpose. Because Prabhupada brings it to ground zero. Prabhupada brings it down to earth. Prabhupada brings it to our level of understanding. Practically what we need to do. Somebody could have, not somebody, many people say, well, yeah, Bhishma Dev spoke to Yudhishthira 5,000 years ago. 5,000 years ago, people were in the caves. So it's not relevant anymore. And as we go through today's verses, let's see how relevant is Bhishma Dev's instructions. Prabhupada is also taking Bhishma Dev's instructions from the Mahabharata, because Bhagavatam is giving succinct verses. Mahabharata is extending it. Prabhupada is taking all that, taking exactly what Bhishma Dev wants us to learn and putting it in his purports. Therefore, you'll see the purports are fairly extensive. And I'm not sure if you found the tone of Srila Prabhupada's writing in these specific purports were different from the previous purports. And we'll mention a few of them. We'll mention as we go through some of them. You'll see this comes off very clear. Prabhupada is very, very bold. He is direct. And you can see that he knows 100%, he's realized 100%, that these instructions is the solution to world peace. And it is up to the followers of Srila Prabhupada, the followers of the Bhagavatam, the followers of Lord Chaitanya, to take these instructions, to live them, and to propagate them, or to arrange in such a way that these instructions then become the backbone of society for everyone to be peaceful. Let us begin. Text 25. Suto vacha yudhishthirastad akarnya sayanam sarapanjare aprichad vividan dharmam harishnam chanushrin vatam. Suda Goswami said, Ma Yudhishthir, after hearing Bhishmadev speak in that appealing tone, tad akarnya, in appealing tone, asked him in the presence of all the great rishis about the essential principles of various religious duties. So few important words here. One is appealing. Appealing tone. Not only did Bhishmadev speak appropriately, but also his tone of speech was appropriate. Very often it is said, it's not what you say, but how you say it. So when we speaking to people, when you're communicating, then the tone is also as important, if not more important, than the content. Bhishmadev's content and Bhishmadev's tone were both appealing. It attracted those that were around him. We mentioned that Bhishmadev could not get up to greet and receive millions of guests, but by his speech, he received them. And that speech was imbued with akarnya, with an appealing tone. So we have to learn, we have to apply, we have to practice this point of how we say what we say. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, it should be pleasing. So it's not an easy thing. Why? Because the tongue, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the tongue is the most difficult to control. This tongue is the most difficult to control. So to control the tongue in a way that we can please people in an appealing tone is a good practice, milestone. And then it's ascribed in the presence of all the sages. What did he want Bhishmadev to speak about? Essential principles of various religious duties. They are essential. There's no time for fillers, no time for gap fillers. We're not interested in filling time, passing time. Right? Somebody wants to pass time, they just talk nonsense. Crack jokes, talk nonsense, village talk. No, essential principles. For who? For all types of souls, according to their position and how they should act. Prabhupada in the purport says, Bhishmadev, speaking in that appealing tone, convinced Yudhishthira that he was very soon passing away. And Yudhishthira was inspired by Lord Shri Krishna to ask him of the principles of religion. Lord Shri Krishna inspired Yudhishthira to ask Bhishmadev in the presence of many great sages, indicating hereby that the Lord's devotees, like Bhishmadev, although apparently living as a worldly man, is far superior to many great sages, even Vyasadeva. So that is also another very, very important lesson that we have to learn. To not judge a book by its cover. To not judge devotees by externals. You don't know who they are. Prabhupada said the demigods, they are lining up to come into this movement, so you don't know who's sitting next to you. He may look ordinary, he may sound ordinary, he may behave ordinary, but he's not ordinary. Therefore, be very careful to judge. Let Krishna be the judge. Our goal, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, our goal is simply to offer all respects to others and not expect anything in return. This is our goal, nothing else. So Bhishmadev, apparently like a worldly man, but Krishna wanted to bring out this lesson that don't judge. Don't judge that he was on the wrong side. Don't judge his mistakes. Don't judge his activities, because you have no idea who that person is. Let Krishna be the judge, the jury, and the executioner, not we. So Krishna wanted to bring this out through the example of Bhishmadev. Even though there were so many great sages, Vyasadeva, the family guru, and Krishna himself is there. Yet, Krishna wanted to glorify his devotee. Another point is that Bhishmadev at the time was not only lying on a deathbed of arrows, but was greatly aggrieved because of that state. One should not have asked him any question at that time. But Lord Shri Krishna wanted to prove that his devotees are always sound in body and mind by dint of spiritual enlightenment. And thus, in any circumstance, the devotee of the Lord is in perfect order to speak of the right way of life. Wonderful. When somebody is dying, and they want to do something, or they want to, the doctor will say, no, you just keep it easy, you save your energy, don't do anything, don't think of anything, because if you think of anything, your vitals will get disturbed. Just keep it easy, keep quiet. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Bhishmadev is going to speak. Krishna is going to glorify him. And Prabhupada is enlightening us that somebody who's on the level of Bhishmadev, in any situation, he can speak. Why? Because his body and mind are always sound, are always fit. And what caused that fitness? By dint of spiritual enlightenment. So as we become more and more Krishna conscious, as we become more and more enlightened, these are some of the symptoms that should become visible, that our mind and body becomes more sound, more fit. Consider Srila Prabhupada. So many devotees, they share when Prabhupada was on a morning walk, he was like a youth. He was 70 years old and 20 years could not keep up with Prabhupada. He would make them breathless. How? How is it possible for a 70-year-old man to walk and it becomes a competition for the 20 years for them to keep up with Prabhupada's pace? Because he was enlightened. Prabhupada would travel from one time zone to another time zone. And Harisari Prabhu tells us, he would be traveling Srila Prabhupada, they land in a country that's completely opposite to the time zone they left from. And if you know about jet lagging, because you're in different time zones, you're still living in the zone that you came from. So it takes hours, sometimes days to come out of jet lag. Prabhupada would land and continue his activities like he was in the previous time zone. There would be absolutely no change. There would be absolutely no jet lag. if, for example, you are leaving South Africa and it's 1 o'clock here, your lunchtime, or let's say it's earlier, maybe it's like 10 o'clock, and 1 o'clock is your lunchtime. And now you fly to India, it's like 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours difference. Now your lunchtime is all changed and your body is going to start reacting. Prabhupada was not impacted at all. It was like he was flying in the same time zone wherever he was. He just landed, continued, whereas Hari Sauri Prabhu would be exhausted. He would be living in his previous time zone, his body giving challenges. Prabhupada was completely enlightened. So this is the impact, this is the effect, this is the proof. And thus, in any circumstance, devotee of the Lord is in perfect order to speak on what? On the right way of life. This is what we're going to hear. I don't know if currently in the school where they still teach right living, we had a subject called right living. Only the problem with right living was very short, because they didn't know themselves what is right living. And then the teacher who's teaching right living is smoking. So really, the right living in schools need to adopt the instructions given by Bhishmadev. Yudhishthir also preferred to solve his problematic questions by asking Bhishmadev rather than ask anyone else present there who was seemingly more learned than Bhishmadev. This is all due to the arrangement of the great wheel carrier Lord Shri Krishna, who establishes the glories of his devotees. So here we see Krishna acting like part of the family. But we have to understand the scriptwriter, the director. The director is Krishna. From beginning to end, the director is Krishna. The Mahabharata, the Ramayana, all these scriptures, the director is Krishna. The director of the spreading of Krishna consciousness, Srimad Mahaprabhu, he's the director. So things don't happen haphazardly. They happen by the will, desire of Krishna. The father likes to see the son become more famous than himself. The Lord declares very emphatically that worship of his devotee is more valuable than the worship of the Lord himself. And this principle is also extremely, extremely important. To serve the pure devotees, to please the pure devotees, gives Krishna great pleasure. To serve the servants of the pure devotees give the pure devotee great pleasure, and therefore gives Krishna the great pleasure. Therefore, serving every single devotee gives Krishna the greatest pleasure. The three principles that Srimad Mahaprabhu instructed all the Vaishnavas to live by is Namaruchi, Jivadoya, and Vaishnav Seva. Attachment to the holy name, chanting the holy name, merciful to the living entities, Jivas, and service to the Vaishnavas, service to the devotees. So to cultivate the proper consciousness to serve every devotee is greatly pleasing to Krishna. We want to cultivate the attitude of serving instead of being served. And every opportunity we get to serve devotees, to inspire devotees, to encourage devotees, to support devotees, to motivate devotees, to help devotees, is extremely pleasing to Krishna. And Krishna is establishing this point here. He could have easily given and relieved Yudhishthira of his dilemma. But no, he wants to glorify Bhishmadev. He's not, oh, how can Bhishmadev be glorified? I'm the supreme personality of Godhead. I should be the one taking the throne. I should be taking the trophy. No. Krishna is always glorified. There's nothing you can do in any situation to not glorify Krishna. He's glorified eternally, everywhere, every time. Because there is nobody greater than him. So he's always glorious. But Krishna takes great pleasure, like Prabhupada says, the father likes to see his son becoming more famous. The spiritual master likes to see the disciple becoming more glorious. This gives the father, the spiritual master, and the Lord greater pleasure than in they themselves doing or achieving. Text 26. Purusha swabhava vihitan yatha varna yatha shramam vairagya ragopa divyam anatpo bhayam lakshanam. At my Yudhishthir's inquiry, Bhishmadev first defined all the classifications of castes and the orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteractions by detachment and interaction by attachment. So Bhishmadev this is the subject that we're going to be covering, the different classifications of the castes, Varna and Ashram, castes and orders, and specifically Guna Karma Vibhagasha, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It is defined by qualities and by work. So we're going to see how Prabhupada very extensively in his purports is going to give us the qualities, the guna, and the work of every single classification. And then also this aspect of detachment and attachment. It's going to come through very, very clearly in Prabhupada's purports. So Prabhupada starts. The conception of the four castes and four orders of life as planned by the Lord himself. So it's not a material creation. It is not speculation. It is a fact because it is created by Krishna. And whatever Krishna creates is perfect. So perfect division of the society. Every individual can be classified according to his varna and ashram, according to his caste, the word is used, caste, and social order or spiritual order and social order, different position. We're not all the same. We have certain traits, certain qualities, certain inclinations, certain attitudes that puts us in a specific category. So this is very, very important. We should align to our nature. So this division of nature is natural, is to accelerate transcendental qualities of the individual persons so that he may gradually realize his spiritual identity and thus act accordingly to get free from material bondage or conditioned life. So why is this natural division important? Because if you are naturally situated according to your nature, what is that going to do? It's going to accelerate transcendental qualities. How is it going to accelerate transcendental qualities? Because everybody is going to act according to their nature, and from the top, there is going to be transcendental direction, which will impact you wherever you are, and thus it will accelerate reviving your true spiritual nature. And that, when that happens, when those qualities, your natural qualities now come out, not just the conditioned natural qualities that you have, but now we're talking about your spiritual natural qualities that you have. because we want to move from material conditioning to spiritual conditioning. So our true spiritual nature comes out. When our true spiritual nature comes out, then we can act accordingly to become free from material existence. So the Varnashram system is not for binding you. It's to liberate you, liberate everybody. In almost all the Puranas, the subject matter is described in the same spirit. And so also in the Mahabharata, it is more elaborately described by Bhishmadev in the Shanti Parva, beginning from the sixth chapter. The Varnashram Dharma is prescribed for the civilized human being, just to train him to successfully terminate human life. What a powerful statement. Imagine you go to a motivational speaker and he tells you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending my seminar. The knowledge that I'm going to cover in this seminar is going to help you. It's going to train you to successfully terminate human life. I think everybody's going to leave because everyone there is interested in becoming more absorbed in their material life than to terminate human life. But it's also because they don't know that this human life is actually, and as Prabhupada says, an embarrassment. Human life is a cage. Human life is bondage. Every body that has a body is in this situation. Self-realization is distinguished from the life of lower animals, engaged in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. Bhishmadev advised for all human beings 9 qualifications. So let's see if we can memorize these 9 qualifications for next week. We are human beings. We are spirit souls that have taken this body, and now we have a human body. What qualifies us humans from animals? Because the animals eat, we eat. Animals sleep, we sleep. Animal mate, we mate. We defend, animals defend. So same activities. What distinguishes me from my dog? Well, here are they, 9. Not to become angry. Interesting. Quality number 1. 2, not to lie. 3, to equally distribute wealth. 4, to forgive. 5, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife. 6, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body. 7, not to be inimical towards anyone. And 8, to be simple. And 9, to support servants or subordinates. If everyone lived by these 9 qualities, what would be the state of this planet? Let's consider if every one of us, if every family member, if every citizen, if every country, every nation lived by these 9 qualifications: not to become angry, not to lie, equally distribute wealth, to forgive, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body, not to be inimical towards anyone, to be simple, to support servants and subordinates. If everyone is to live by these values and qualities, qualifications, no doubt life would be peaceful. People will be more happy. So we need to live by these and propagate these qualities to the masses. Because these are not just qualities, they're qualifications. If we don't live by these qualities, we're not qualified to be humans. And if you're not qualified to be humans, nature will give you an animal body in your next life. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above mentioned preliminary qualities. So these are not even the final qualities, these are preliminary qualities. There's 30 qualities for civilized human beings that are described in the future cantos of the Bhagavatam. So here at least we have preliminary qualities of a civilized person. Consider how uncivilized, advanced technologically we are. Give a dog a remote control, and all he will do is bite it or ignore it, because it's not even a bone. So give an uncivilized person technology, they will use it for destruction. Besides these, the Brahmanas, the intellectual man, the intelligent man, the administrative man, the mercantile community, and the labor class must acquire special qualities in terms of occupational duties mentioned or in all the Vedic scriptures. So besides these 9 qualifications, which everyone should have, for them to be civilized and for them to be qualified, there are specific qualities and traits for the different categories of men. And these qualities are also gross and subtle. So you'll see from the higher class to the lower class, it goes from subtle to gross, from internal development to external activities. You'll see the classes on the lower end, they have more focus on external activities. And as you evolve higher, internally you develop more refinement. For the intelligent men, so for the Brahmanas, controlling the senses is the most essential qualification. You can see it's internal. It is the basis of morality. Sex indulgence, even with a legitimate wife, must be controlled. And thereby family control will automatically follow. An intelligent man abuses his great qualifications if he does not follow the Vedic way of life. This means he must seriously make a study of Vedic literatures, especially of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. For learning Vedic knowledge, one must approach a person who is 100% engaged in devotional service. He must not do things which are forbidden in Shastra. A person cannot be a teacher if he drinks or smokes. In the modern society of education, the teacher's academic qualification is taken into consideration without evaluation of his morals. Therefore, the result of education is misuse of high intelligence in so many ways. So those who are Brahmanical, those who are teachers, those who are philosophers, those who are scientists, the intellectual type of people, individuals, what are their duties? Their duties is they must control their senses. And how do we know they're controlling their senses? They only have sex life, sex indulgence with their wife. And that also only for procreation. Then they must use their intelligence to study scripture. And which two specifically? Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. They have to teach by example. Therefore, they should not be engaging in smoking and drinking. So we can understand that our current civilization has moved away far, far, far away from these instructions. Therefore, we can see the result. Now we come to the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas, the member of the administrative class, is especially advised to give charity and not to accept charity in any circumstance. Modern administrators raise subscriptions for some political functions, but never give charity to citizens in any state function. So we see how Prabhupada is giving the instructions and also showing the shortfall of these instructions in today's time. It is just the reverse in the injunctions of the Shastras. The administrative class must be well versed in Shastra, but must not take to the profession of a teacher. So the Kshatriyas, the warriors, the administrators, they should know Shastra, but not take the position of teachers. That's the Brahmanical class that we already covered. They are the teachers. The Kshatriyas, like Yudhishthir, Bhishmadev, they administer. And part of their duty is to give in charity at every function. Like we find in today's birthday ceremonies, and the culture is people need to give you gifts. No, in Vedic culture, the birthday ceremony means you give gifts so that you have to get blessings. So like that, the Kshatriyas, modern administrators are not meant to take charity. They meant to give charity. Now, if this happens, that whenever there's a political rally, whenever there's a political function, and they're able to give charity to everyone, and not only if you attend, but everyone gets charity, the citizens will be very happy and peaceful. The administrators should not pretend to become non-violent and thereby go to hell. Bold. There's no question of a Kshatriya, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti is okay, we're not going to do anything. No. There has to be violence, but violence administered for the right cause according to scripture, guided by the Brahmanical class, by the intellectual class, the head of the society, which Prabhupada already addressed. They have to study Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. When they study Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, they'll be able to understand how to guide the rest of the body, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Sudras. The head needs to be together. The head needs to be screwed in the right way, as they say. At least you need to have a head. Can't be a headless chicken, because then you'll run wild. So currently the society, unfortunately, has no head. And therefore we need to give society an head. That was Prabhupada's vision of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He wanted to create the Brahmanical culture, the head of society. We still have a long way to go, but that was Prabhupada's vision, because he could see the society is headless, and you cannot educate a headless society. Like Prabhupada, when they say Prabhupada, they say they're brainwashing us. Prabhupada said, first, we have to give them brain, then wash. So this is the goal, to give head, then direct. When Arjuna wanted to become non-violent, coward, I would call it, becoming a coward. On a battlefield of Kurukshetra, he was severely chastised by Lord Krishna. The Lord degraded Arjuna at that time to a status of an uncivilized man for his avowed acceptance of the cult of non-violence. Now Prabhupada is going to talk about this administration of violence. The administrative class must be personally trained in military education. Right? So it's about training. It's amazing how people live with no upbringing, no training, and they're living their life. It's like running a business with no training. Driving a car with no training. jumping into the ocean and not learning how to swim. Disastrous. The administrative class must be personally trained in military education. Cowards should not be elevated to the presidential throne by dint of numerical votes only. So you notice Prabhupada's, he's not keeping any punches. He's giving the blows. This is the promoter society, right? Your voting mechanism, Prabhupada says, democracy means dim and crazy. One rascal selecting, or many rascals selecting bigger rascal. And Prabhupada says, if the president, if the leader goes astray and does something wrong, it's not his fault. It's the rascals that selected him. It's their fault. It's those who voted him. Because they don't know who to vote for, they vote a rascal, and then when a rascal acts like a rascal, they blame him. They're disappointed. So it's about educating the masses of the proper qualities that the leader should have. Then it's about educating the followers so that they can understand where they should be and where leaders should be. The monarchs were all chivalrous personalities, and therefore monarchy should be maintained provided the monarch is regularly trained in the occupational duties of a king. So it's not, oh, it's a lineage, therefore you become a king. No. If you're not trained, you're not qualified to be a king. There has to be proper training for the king. They have to go for a college. Therefore, Prabhupada wanted to set up the Varnashram College, where all this, what Prabhupada is describing in these purports, are meant to be taught. And this is the task left to us by Srila Prabhupada for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness and its members. And you see Prabhupada, when I read these purports, what came to my mind is Prabhupada's conviction that if we are to set up something like this and train, yes, it's not going to be an overnight, it'll take years, but we got 432,000 years to go for Kali Yuga to end. So there's no shortage of time. But at least if we go in that direction and we start training, one day the fruits will manifest. And these words will come true. Right now, it's like, really? Are we meant to do this? But there will be a time when this will become reality. In fighting, the king or the president should never return home without being hurt by the enemy. The so-called king of today never visits the warfield. He is very much expert in artificially encouraging the fighting strength in the hope of false national prestige. As soon as the administrative class is turned into a gang of mercantile and labor men, the whole machinery of government becomes polluted. So clearly the reality of today's world. So that was the administrative class, Kshatriyas. And there's more, but this is Prabhupada's giving the essence in this purports. So now we come to the Vaishya class. The Vaishyas, the members of the mercantile community, are especially advised to protect cows. That means grihastas, the businesses, these are the mercantile class. Cow protection means increasing the milk productions, namely curd and butter. Agriculture and distribution of foodstuffs are the primary duties of the mercantile community, backed by education in Vedic knowledge and trained to give in charity. each of these statements is like a cause on its own. Agricultural and distribution of foodstuffs are the prime duties of a mercantile community backed by education in Vedic knowledge. You'll see every one of these categories of class of men must know the Vedas. And trained. Training is a must to give in charity. Why training in giving in charity? Because you can't just give in charity. You have to give in charity according to time, place, and circumstance, as Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita. Right place, right time to the right person. At the right occasions. As the Kshatriyas were given charge of the protection of citizens, Vaishyas are given charge of the protection of animals. So if we have good Kshatriyas, we have protected citizens. If we have good Vaishyas, we have protected animals. So the whole society is now protected, cared for, peaceful. Animals are never meant to be killed. Killing of animals is a symptom of barbarian society. Billions and billions of chickens, animals, are killed every year. So we are living in a barbaric society. And therefore, Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, they would stress again and again that there is a great need for Krishna consciousness. Because of this symptom of Kali Yuga. For a human being, agricultural produce, fruits, and milk are sufficient and compatible foodstuffs. The human society should give more attention to animal protection. The productive energy of the laborer is misused when he is occupied by the industrial enterprises. Industry of various types cannot produce the essential needs of men, namely rice, wheat, grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables. The production of machines and machine tools increases the artificial living fashion of a class of vested interests and keep thousands of men in starvation and unrest. This should not be the standard of civilization. Totally converse from the current trajectory. People want to increase machinery, increase factories, increase an artificial lifestyle of living. All you need is milk, rice, wheat, grains, and fruit. Nothing else. Or in vegetables. And you'll be happy. But modern society have distracted everyone to say, no, now you need all these other accessories, artificial fashion living items, foodstuffs that are in boxes, all to create a disparity. As Prabhupada is saying here, it's there created by the class of vested interests. Why? To keep thousands of men in starvation and unrest. So if we read between the lines, it means that as long as those who have invested interests in keeping you distracted with toys, machines, technology, away from natural living, will just increase the disparity between poor and rich, keep people in starvation, and have a constant cycle of unrest, all in the name of civilized life. Now we come to the Sudras. The Sudra class is less intelligent and should have no independence. Now already Prabhupada is touching on a very, very, very touchy subject. No independence? I mean, like, I like to be independent. But we find Srila Prabhupada's going to explain how they become dependent and how that dependence helps them to be happy. So firstly, they don't have the thinking power. They cannot think on their own. You need to think for them. You need to tell them, do this, and they do it. And you see, there are classes of society like that. They are meant for rendering sincere service to the three highest sections of society. The Sudra class can attain all comforts of life simply by rendering service to the higher classes. So it's not like they are starving, they don't have anything to eat, they don't have proper clothes, they don't have a roof over their head. No, that's not the case. They have all comforts of life without any money. It is especially enjoined that the Sudra should never bank money. No bank account. As soon as a Sudra accumulates wealth, it will be misused for sinful activities in wine, women, and gambling. Wine, women, and gambling indicate that the population is degraded to less than Sudra qualities. The higher castes should always look after the maintenance of the Sudras. The higher castes should always look after the maintenance of the Sudras, and they should provide them with old and new garments. The Sudra should not leave his master when the master is old and invalid, and the master should keep the servant satisfied in all respects. So you can see it's not a competition. We are interdependent, and the other three classes will make sure that the Sudras are looked after, just like the legs. The legs cannot think. The legs cannot produce money. The legs cannot protect. It's the hands that protect the legs from danger. It is the head that guides the legs where to go. It is the belly that provides nutrient for the legs to work. So there's interdependence. And if you don't have the legs, where is the head going to go? So where is the body going to go? So you need all the bodily parts. So the Sudras are important, as important as all the other bodily parts. Therefore, they should be maintained nicely, comfortably, provided all the necessities to live a comfortable life. And when you provide good food, sumptuous food, wonderful clothes, and wonderful shelter, what else do they need? They'll be happy serving their masters. The Sudras must first of all be satisfied by sumptuous food and clothing before any sacrifice is performed. And when do they get this? They get it before every single sacrifice. So when there's the next sacrifice, the Sudra is waiting. When is the next sacrifice? Oh, we want, right? And they're happy to be engaged. They're happy to serve the master because they know they're going to get rewarded. So it's not a struggle. It's a festival for them. In this age, so many functions are held by spending millions, but the poor laborer is not sumptuously fed or given charity, clothing, etc. The laborers are thus dissatisfied, and so they make agitation. So these instructions need to be presented as law to the government. And the time will come, as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the lawyers will have tilak on their heads. Presidents and ministers will have tilak on their heads. At that time, they will follow these instructions and put this in place. So now we're going to go over the ashrams, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. We covered the brahmanas, the kshatriyas, the vaishyas, and the sudras. Now Prabhupada's going to cover the next 4 categories. The varnas are, so to speak, classification of different occupations. And the ashram dharma is the gradual progress on the path of self-realization. So what we covered in terms of the brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, and sudra is for different occupations, your different affiliation in terms of your skill sets and aptitude, qualities, etc. Now the ashram, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, celibate life, household life, renounce and fully renounced life. And that is more for spiritual evolution. So you got material stability and you got spiritual stability. Both hand in hand helps peace in society. Both are interrelated and one is dependent on the other. So you cannot have one without the other. The main purpose of ashram dharma is to awaken knowledge and detachment. The brahmachari ashram is training ground for the prospective candidates. In this ashram, it is instructed that this material world is not actually the home of a living being. The conditioned soul under material bondage are prisoners of matter, and therefore self-realization is the ultimate aim of life. The whole system of ashram dharma is meant to detachment. So this is what students are meant to be taught. In today's world, the students are taught how to make money and how to enjoy. That's all. One who fails to assimilate this spirit of detachment is allowed to enter into family life with the same spirit of detachment. So the brahmacharis are taught the true reality of this material world, detachment, why we should become detached, what is this material world, and those who can sustain themselves in that ashram are meant to stay. If they cannot, then they can get married. But even in marriage, even in household life, detachment must be there. And the rules and regulations that govern household life, grihastha life, is based on this principle also. That's why it's not unrestricted. There's no unrestricted enjoyment, sex life. That's animal life. Therefore, one who attains detachment may at once adopt the 4th order, namely renounced, and thus live on charity only, not to accumulate wealth, but just to keep body and soul together for ultimate realization. Household life is for one who is attached, and the vanaprastha and sannyas order of life are for those who are detached from material life. Brahmachari ashram is meant for training both attached and detached. So these orders are specifically there to help you become detached from material life, situate yourself in spiritual life so that you can become attached to spiritual life and return back home. That is the purpose. It is not to go to school, get educated, to get a job, to get married, to have children, to die and start the cycle again. That is not the goal. There is a higher goal. Text 27. Dana dharmam raja dharmam moksha dharmam vibhagasha stri dharmam bhagavata dharmam samasa vyasa yogata. He then explained by division acts of charity, pragmatic activities of a king, and activities for salvation. Then he described the duties of women and devotees, both briefly and extensively. So Bhishmadev went to great detail describing these different areas, which Prabhupada shares in the purport. To give charity is one of the householder's main functions, and he should be prepared to give in charity at least 50% of his hard-earned money. The brahmachari, student, should perform sacrifices. A household should give charity, and a person in the retired life or in a renounced order should practice penance and austerities. So these are the main activities of these ashrams. The brahmachari owns nothing. Everything he has, his mind, body, words, everything that he gets is for the spiritual master and the service of the spiritual master. The householder has licenses to do different activities, but they're meant to give at least 50% in spreading Krishna consciousness in serving society under the guidance of qualified Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. Those are the general functions of all the ashrams or orders of life on the path of self-realization. In the brahmachari life, the training is sufficiently imparted so that one may understand that the world as property belongs to the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead. No one, therefore, can claim to be the proprietor of anything in the world. Therefore, in the household life, which is a sort of license for sex enjoyment, one must give in charity for the service of the Lord. Everyone's energy is generated or borrowed from the reservoir of energy of the Lord. Therefore, the resultant actions of such energy must be given to the Lord in the shape of transcendental loving service for him. As the river draws water from the sea through the clouds and again go down to the sea, similarly our energy is borrowed from the supreme source, the Lord's energy, and it must return to the Lord. That is the perfection of our energy. Such a wonderful example. The other example is also given of how you worship the Ganges. You take water from the Ganges and you offer it to the Ganges. So all energies that we have, all abilities that we have, is all borrowed from Krishna. Therefore, we should not be proud because it's Krishna's energies. You should be grateful Krishna has given it to us, and we should simply use it in Krishna's service. This is the perfection of our energy, our ability, our talents, our life. This is the sum and substance of all the ashrams and all the varnas. Because each one has a certain quality, certain nature, certain capacity, certain ability. And all these are coming from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, use it in Krishna's service. The Lord, therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 9:27 says that whatever we do, whatever we undergo as penance, whatever we sacrifice, whatever we eat, or whatever we give away in charity must be offered to him, the Lord. That is the way of utilizing our borrowed energy. When our energy is utilized in that way, our energy is purified from the contamination of material inabilities, and thus we become fit for our original natural life of service to the Lord. So we have to understand this is the aim, this is the purpose of the Varnashram system, to allow everyone to be engaged according to the nature with the higher purpose of understanding that we don't belong here and that we are part and parcel of Krishna and everything is coming from Krishna, all energies are borrowed from Krishna, and therefore we have to offer it back to him. And this training starts right from birth, right from brahmacharya life. In fact, even before brahmacharya life, even before conception, because the couple is thinking like this during conception. And that consciousness then gets filtered down and further training is developed. Now Prabhupada talks about Raja Dharma. how to rule the country. Raja Dharma is a great science, unlike modern diplomacy for political supremacy. What a powerful statement. It's a science. It has to be learned. And because it's a science, if you apply it as it is, you get results every single time. The problem is we've introduced modern diplomacy for political supremacy. The kings were trained systematically to become munificent and not merely be tax collectors. They were trained to perform different sacrifices only for the prosperity of the subjects. Note how many times Prabhupada is using the word trained. It is not by chance. It is not by vote. It is by training. And they are meant to perform different sacrifices for who? Not for themselves, not for their family members, not for their extended family members, not for their colors, not for their nation, but for the prosperity of every single subject, both animals and human beings. To lead the prajas to the attainment of salvation was a great duty of the king. They are meant to help society become Krishna conscious. They are meant to help society become liberated from death. The father, the spiritual master, and the king are not to become irresponsible in the matter of leading their subjects to the path of ultimate liberation from birth, death, disease, and old age. So we want to have our own party. And we want to go out and canvass. Please join our party. Please vote for me. And what will I do for you? I will help you and guide you and teach you according to the Vedas so that you can become ultimately liberated from birth, death, disease, and old age. There was a disciple, he asked Srila Prabhupada if he can go and join the political party and at least try to spread Krishna consciousness like that. Prabhupada said yes. Naturally, he didn't get a lot of votes because people are not interested in these things. They're interested in enjoying sense gratification and suffering. They don't realize that they don't want to be happy, but the path that they're choosing is destined to give them misery. When these primary duties are properly discharged, there is no need of government of the people by the people. People have the slogan that we need a government that's selected by the people for the people. Nope. When they are aligned to the Vedas and how they should be trained to live a life and lead a life of Raj Dharma, then you won't need that, because why? They will be doing what is already for the people. In modern days, the people in general occupy the administration by strength of manipulated votes. But they are never trained in the primary duties of the king. And that is also not possible for everyone. Under the circumstance, the untrained administrators play havoc to make the subject happy in all respects. So we see this is the reality. On the other hand, these untrained administrators gradually become rogues and thieves and increase the taxation to finance a top-heavy administration that is useless for all purposes. What graphical description of the reality of the leaders of today's world. And Prabhupada is not hiding it. When an author wants to get his books published and numbers increase, he will be very careful what he writes in his books. No. Do not write that. You're going to disturb some people. Don't write that. It's going to upset that group of people. They're not going to buy the books. Prabhupada is not interested in undercover sugarcoating. He's speaking the truth. And the truth has to be told. Otherwise, people will be misled for years and years and ages and ages. Actually, the qualified brahmanas are meant to give direction to the kings for proper administration in terms of scripture like Manu Samhita and Dharma Shastras or Parasara. And we see Dashrath Maharaj had that. He had specialists in every field from the Vedas to guide society. When King Dashrath was ruling, every single citizen was happy. A typical king is ideal of the people in general. And if a king is pious, religious, chivalrous, and munificent, citizens generally follow him. Such a king is not a lazy, sensuous person living at the cost of subjects, but alert always to kill thieves and dacoits. The pious kings were not merciful to the dacoits and thieves in the name of nonsensical ahimsa, non-violence. The thieves and dacoits were punished in an exemplary way so that in the future no one would dare commit such nuisance in an organized form. Such thieves and dacoits were never meant for administrations as they are now. There was one of the previous kings called Shivaji that ruled India, and he had a powerful minister, his chief minister, commander-in-chief. And one day his commander-in-chief captured a lady and brought the lady to Shivaji. And Shivaji apologized to the lady to say, "Dear mother, please forgive me, I'm very sorry." Took the lady back to her home, made sure that she was now protected, sheltered, and given all care by the king, by Shivaji. And then he returned to his kingdom and chopped off his chief minister's hands to set an example. This was the chief commander's hands. And this was a chief commander who won many battles. He was most powerful. But for Shivaji, who was a Raj Rishi, who was following according to the Vedas, what he did was totally against the Vedas. So you can see if he did that to his main man, what lesson, what message would that filter down to the rest of the army and to the rest of the citizens? That if he could do that to his chief commander, who are we if we do that? Nothing. So better be careful, avoid doing that. So this is how he protected the thieves and dacoits from coming up into society, by setting an example so that the citizens would not deviate and misalign themselves taking these occupations. Nowadays, because that is not there, you can, becoming a thief and dacoit is actually a good business, and therefore it's thriving. Now, even though these were aspects that is important, but not as important as the main focus, which is self-realization. So first Prabhupada talks about self-taxation, continues about taxation. The taxation law was simple. There was no force or no encroachment. Now, naturally, there was no force because people had so much that they were happy to give the king. And if there was no produce, for some reason you did not produce enough grains this year, then no problem. The king would not do anything. Next, when you have produced, you can give. The king had the right to take 1/4 of the production made by the subject. The king had a right to claim 1/4 of one's allocated wealth. One would never grudge parting with it because due to the pious king and the religious harmony, there was enough natural wealth, namely grains, fruits, flowers, silk, cotton, milk, jewels, minerals, etc. And therefore, no one was materially unhappy. What a society. We have a long way to go. The citizens were rich in agriculture and animal husbandry. And therefore they had enough grains, fruits, and milk without any artificial needs of soaps and toilets, cinemas, and bars. So what you need is grains, fruits, flowers, silk, cotton, milk, jewels, and minerals. Not soaps, not toilets, not cinemas, and not bars. Artificial necessities. These are not real needs. Your real needs are natural gifts given by Krishna. The king had to see that the reserved energy of humanity was properly utilized. Human energy is meant not exactly for fulfilling animal propensities, but for self-realization. The whole government was specifically designed to fulfill this particular purpose. As such, the king had to select properly the cabinet ministers, but not on the strength of voting background. The ministers, the military commanders, and even ordinary soldiers were all selected by personal qualification, and the king had to supervise them properly before they were appointed to their respective posts. Again, training and qualification. We remember in our previous purpose, Prabhupada said, even a spiritual leader, it's not like he's pure and therefore he can be selected. No, he has to have the competency. So here we see one has to be competent both by skill, by talent, and by virtue and qualities. It's not that you're good at fighting, but you're a demon by mentality and demonic by mentality. That doesn't go. We see during the Mahabharata or even during Ramayana, so many great warriors, but with such refined exemplary qualities that they would behave and act and fight like they saintly people with skills and valor of great warriors. The king was especially vigilant to see that the tapasvi or persons who sacrifice everything for the disseminating spiritual knowledge were never disregarded. The king knew well that the Supreme Personality of Godhead never tolerates any insult to his unalloyed devotees. Such tapasvi were trusted leaders even of the rogues and thieves, who would never disobey the orders of tapasvi. We find the Goswamis, they were kind to the ruffians and to the gentle. The king would give special protection to the illiterates, the helpless, and the widows of the state. Defense measures were arranged previous to any attack of the enemies. Taxing process was easy, and it was not meant for squandering, but for strengthening the reserve fund. Soldiers were recruited from all parts of the world, and they were trained for special duties. And in a war, you could select, the soldiers could go from one army to the next army. If you felt that my side is not religious, you could go to the opposite side that is religious. There was freedom for that. As far as salvation is concerned, one has to conquer the subjects, one has to conquer the principles of lust, anger, unlawful desires, avarice, and bewilderment. To get freedom from anger. Now we're going to learn countermeasures that Bhishmadev is sharing. You have to adopt these countermeasures to counteract these avarice aspects, unwanted aspects of life. So to get freedom from anger, remember the first principle of civilized qualification of human being, preliminary qualification was not to get angry. So here's the counteraction. To get freedom from anger, one should learn how to forgive. To be free from unlawful desire, one should not make plans. By spiritual culture, one is able to conquer sleep. By tolerance only can one conquer desires and avarice. Disturbances from various diseases can be avoided by regulated diets. By self-control, one can be free from false hopes, and money can be saved by avoiding undesirable association. By practice of yoga, one can control hunger, and worldliness can be avoided by culture of knowledge and impermanence. Dizziness can be conquered by rising up, and false arguments can be conquered by factual ascertainment. Talkativeness can be avoided by gravity and silence, and by prowess one can avoid fearfulness. Perfect knowledge can be obtained by self-cultivation. One must be freed from lust, avarice, anger, dreaming, etc. to actually attain the path of salvation. As far as women class are concerned, they are accepted as the power of inspiration for men. As such, women are more powerful than men. Mighty Julius Caesar was controlled by Cleopatra. Such powerful women are controlled by shyness. Therefore, shyness is important for women. Once this control valve is loosened, women can create havoc in society by adultery. Adultery means production of unwanted children known as Varna Shankara, who disturb the world. Unfortunately, this valve is broken, not even loosened. People have no idea of shyness. But in Vedic culture, this quality of shyness was a jewel, was attractive, was powerful. And it created that distance. It created that healthy separation and protected loose association. Therefore, you find because women were shy, they would not just embrace any man. It doesn't matter who the person is because of that shyness. And it's also described that Radharani wears two garments. The outer garment is her affection for Krishna, and her inner garment is her shyness. So this quality of shyness has to be cultivated in women. The last item taught by Bhishma Dev was the process of pleasing the Lord. We are all eternal servants of the Lord. And when we forget this essential part of our nature, we are put into material condition of life. The simple process of pleasing the Lord for the householders especially is to install the deity of the Lord at home. By concentrating on the deity, one progressively go on with their daily routine work, worshiping the deity at home, serving the devotees, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, residing holy place, and chanting the holy name of the Lord are all inexpensive items by which one can please the Lord. See, Prabhupada is very practical. He puts the adjective inexpensive because we generally, well, it's too expensive. Well, these things are not very expensive. If you install dairies, you don't need to have chapan bhog, 64 preparations. Little water, little fruit, little flower, one flower. Krishna is happy. So one can offer for devotion. Thus, the subject matter was explained by grandfather to his grandchildren. Such profound wisdom that is extremely beneficial to the world. Text 28. Dharmata kama moksham cha sohapayan yata mune nana kyat netihaseshu varnayam ashatatvati tat bhavit. Then he described the occupational duties of different orders and statuses of life, citing instances from history, for he was himself well acquainted with the truth. So for every aspect that Bhishma Dev was sharing and glorifying and extolling, right, he was quoting from scripture and he was giving historical accounts and examples. Prabhupada in the purport says, incidents mentioned in the Vedic literature such as the Puranas, Mahabharata, Ramayana are factual historical narrations that took place sometimes in the past, although not in any chronological order. such historical facts being instructive for ordinary men were associated without chronological reference. Besides that, they happen on different planets, nay, in different universes. And thus, the descriptions of the narrations sometimes measured by 3 dimensions. We are simply concerned with the instructive lessons of such incidents, even though they are not in order by our limited range of understanding. Bhishmadev describes such narrations before Yudhishthira in reply to his different questions. So we have to understand the Vedas are not chronological, like in today's history. Today's history is chronological and useless. The Vedas gave historical incidents of great personalities connected to the most important aspect, which is self-realization, relationship with Krishna. Therefore, the Vedas have important knowledge, not just to fill a book or to fill the brain or to waste time. What they call to just spend time, let time run, waiting for time to pass. No, it was very important. And we also have to understand when we're going through Bhagavatam, when we're going through Ramayana, when we're going to Mahabharata, there will be specific questions that will come up in your consciousness. Make sure that you verify and validate that question in relation to Prabhupada's point here. And what is that? Is that we are simply concerned with the instructive lessons of such incidents. Not interested in all the other details. And I'll give you an example. The example is Ajamil. So in the Puranas, it's described that Ajamil in his previous life was a Brahmanical person who was swimming and drowning. And as he was drowning, in fact, he was a brahmachari, celibate student, Brahmanically inclined, and he was drowning. And it so happened that a pious lady was walking by and she noticed that he was drowning. So she went in and rescued him. When she brought him to shore, Ajamil, understanding the situation, started to chastise her. I'm a brahmachari. How could you have touched me? And she's saying, what's wrong with you? You were drowning. So I had to save you. How can I save you without touching you? No. You deviate from the principles. I'm a brahmachari, you're not meant to touch me. So Ajamil was very upset that he got touched by a woman, and he's a brahmachari. So he said, I curse you. You acted like a prostitute. I curse you to become a prostitute. So she was no ordinary lady also. So she cursed Ajamil in his previous life. I curse you that I will become the cause of your fall down in future. So in the next life, Ajamil becomes Ajamil, and he becomes attracted to the prostitute that allows him to fall down. Now, when you hear that story from the Vedas, you say, wow, I know a little more information about Ajamil's previous life. How wonderful. Nope. We have to pause and stop there. That is not the instruction and the lesson that we learn from Ajamil. The lesson we learn from Ajamil in the 6th canto is related to the glory of the holy name. So we don't want to be distracted from that lesson. Or like, for example, in Jad Bharat's case, Jad Bharat was a pure devotee. On the stage of Bhava, he got attached to the deer. If he's a pure devotee and he got attached to the deer, then what happened to the deer? Do not get distracted in the details. Understand the lesson. And that's why you will see Prabhupada is very focused in his purpose. His purpose keep us focus. His purports does not go all over the show. They directed to specific instructions. Therefore, we say that Prabhupada's purports are more important than the verses, because Prabhupada's giving relevance, direction, focus. And if it's not in Prabhupada's purport, then it's not as relevant or important for you to know. So don't bother, don't worry. Focus on what Prabhupada is giving us. That itself is voluminous. So don't preoccupy your brain with everything else. Now, when did this sequence happen? When is that sequence happen? What happens first? What happens second? No, don't worry. If that's not to be known, it's not there in Prabhupada's purpose. If Prabhupada's given it, it's there for your education. Learn it. But do not get sidetracked from the most important lesson that's been given, the instruction that is given for the different historical events, which occur not only in this universe, but all over the universes, all other universes, billions and trillions of universes that are there in creation. The truth, or the true wealth, these two verses, very powerful verses that I thought I share. Prabhupada says these books are so potent that anyone who reads them is sure to become Krishna conscious. So it is a very valuable service to distribute our books. And we see Bhishma Dev is giving such pertinent instructions, which Srila Prabhupada is synthesizing, filtering, directing for our society. If we embrace those instructions, people will be happy. So knowledge is such powerful information. And these two verses, Nachoram Haryam, Nacha Raja Haryam, Na Bratu Bajyam, Nacha Barakari, Vyaye Krute Vardata Eva Nitya, Vidyadanam Sarvadanam Pradhanam. Glorifying knowledge. And what it says about knowledge: thief cannot steal it. No higher authority can abduct it. It is not divided between siblings. It is not heavy to carry. When you spend it or share it, it always increases. Knowledge is the best and important wealth among all wealths. So we have the greatest wealth that Srila Prabhupada is giving, is offering to us. Knowledge gives you humility. Humility gives you character. From character, wealth is earned. From wealth, you get righteousness. In righteousness, you feel well-being. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Bhishmadev ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. Are there any questions or comments anyone has in relation to the content that we've covered? Next week, you can please type those questions in the chat or comments or feedback. Next week, we will be covering verses 29 to 31. Rasaraj Prabhu, I was also curious to know where the references of those two verses were. And I tried to search, I couldn't find. So what came to my mind was the purport to the last verse. The instruction is there, good enough. Right? And the instruction, and it's like pertinent instructions, it's clear, nobody can argue. So if nobody's going to argue, nobody's going to say, where did it come from? If we don't know the source, we're not accepting it. So I tried to find the source, I couldn't find the source. If you do find the source, let me know. But yeah, I couldn't find the source. It's quoted in some places, but the source is not there. One of my Shiksha gurus quoted it. So I looked at it and found it. And Yeah, I used it. And sometimes I also have, when some devotees say something, it's good to know the references, but at the same time, if they're speaking the truth, then yes, the reference in one sense is not as important as the instruction. Right? So it's good to quote like Prabhupada's references, etc., because that establishes the Siddhanta in our lineage. But there may be cases where we don't have references. Like you find there are many verses in our verse book, and they say author unknown. There are certain songs we have in our lineage that says author unknown. So that is there, author unknown. Please explain Krishna karma. So Krishna karma is karma that you have, which Krishna administers. It's called Krishna karma. There is a karma or devotional service, which produces no karma. But then there's Krishna karma, which is karma that Krishna personally administers. So Srila Prabhupada says anyone who chants Hare Krishna even once, then Krishna administers the karma. For a materialist, his karma is administered by the law of karma, the law of action and reaction. As you sow, so shall you reap. That is administered by Krishna's law that Krishna put in place, like the law of gravity. So the law of gravity, even though we say we are kept down by law of gravity, but actually the law of gravity is the power of Anantashesh. So we are kept down by Anantashesh potency. Similarly, the law of karma is under Krishna's domain. Krishna's created it. But when you surrender to Krishna, then the law of karma doesn't administer karma. Then Krishna personally takes charge. That is called Krishna karma. You don't need to be a pure devotee. Prabhupada says you just chant one. You're just chanting even one time. Krishna is interested. Hemavati Radhika says, very interesting class. Thank you very much for explaining so nicely to us. We're so grateful. Thank you very much, Hemavati Radhika, for your comment and feedback. Madhachani Siddhi says, Hare Krishna Guru, thank you for the nice class. We can see that same as Bhishma Dev, Srila Prabhupada was also instructing disciple on his deathbed. Yes. Prabhupada said that was the final lesson. Bafana Prabhu, what's wrong with smoking and reading? What's wrong with smoking and reading Prabhupada purport? What do I say to a Rasta who believes marijuana gives him focus, concentration, heightens his consciousness to be pious, etc.? What exactly do I say? So for different Rastas, you would say differently. And I'll give you an example. For this specific Rasta, you would say, no, you're right. Here's a Simply Wonderful. And I'll give you one Simply Wonderful every month. And that's how he's going to get purified. Right? If he's smoking and reading Prabhupada's books, that means he's into his Rastafarian lifestyle and he's reading Prabhupada's books, he's getting benefit. See, do not worry so much about people's current condition. Rather, understand that they're coming in contact with Prabhupada's books. They come in contact with the pure devotee. That is glorious. And that association, like Lord Nityananda on Jagai and Madai, Prabhupada on countless of Jagai and Madais, will transform them, will purify them. And I'll give you an example. So Prabhupada said that we should create lucky dolls. And these lucky dolls are God-in-tie dolls. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, lucky dolls, he called them. And we should distribute these lucky dolls in the streets. Should sell them in the streets as lucky dolls. So we should tell people that you get lucky when you have these lucky dolls. And we should sell them, and we should take the details down. And we should tell them to put these lucky dolls on the TV set. Then after a month, you call them and you ask them, are you getting any luck? And they'll say, no, nothing's working. So then you ask them, well, did the person who sold you the lucky dolls sell you the lucky sticks? And they'll say, no. So, well, without the lucky sticks, you're not going to get, you have to get lucky sticks. So then you go visit them and now you sell them lucky sticks, incense. And you show them how to turn the lucky sticks around the lucky dolls that is situated on the television set in the dining room. And you can even teach them the lucky mantra next round. So in this way, they're chanting the lucky mantra with the lucky sticks to the lucky dolls. And most guaranteed, rest assured, their luck is going to change. So that was Prabhupada's vision. Now, what's interesting is Prabhupada was allowing Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda to enter into the house of meat eaters, because they would be eating their meat right in front of the television set. But they were not worried. Why? Because they're not interested and they don't look at qualification or disqualification. Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, Prabhupada, they don't look at qualification, disqualification. They're only interested in giving mercy. All they see is, wow, just see. These souls have brought us to their home. Oh, wow, just see, they're looking at us. Oh, just see, they're offering incense with us, to us, and they give mercy. So don't worry about whether somebody's smoking or reading Prabhupada's books, in this case with the Rastafarian. The fact that they're reading, that's important. There are those who don't smoke and never read. So if somebody's smoking and reading, it's okay, right? So what do you say to some Rastafarian that believe that? You tell him, yep. Try this Mangal Sweet. Keep reading. And you will see, you will realize. Krishna will reveal from the inside. Because sometimes it's difficult for us to preach. So let Krishna do the work. Prasadam does wonders from preaching from the inside out. Philosophy is outside in, and generally the intelligence blocks it. Prasadam preaches from the inside out. It's already in. Intelligence can't block. So don't preach, befriend them, feed them. Tons of prasad. You just nod. See, and here's another secret, Bafana Prabhu. Bhagavatam says that even with your family members, you can say yes, but internally you say no. So learn that. If this person tells you that taking marijuana, allows you to focus and concentrate items, etc., you can say yes, take a Mangal Sweet. But internally, no, because they're not ready to hear. Then there are those who are open. Those who are open, they'll be more open to hear. Then you can even take a Rastafarian friend who was in the same situation, who became Krishna conscious, now stopped. He's the best person to preach to your friend because he's got experience. Like Prabhupada, I'll give you an example. So Prabhupada was giving a talk, and Prabhupada said that this Maha Mantra is more powerful, and it's more powerful than any drug. So somebody in the audience, he challenged Prabhupada, but how, Swamiji, you never taken any drugs. How can you say that? So the Prabhupada said, I didn't take any drugs, but my students have, and they've given up drugs because they're chanting Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna is better than drugs. So the man was still not convinced. Now, that's a valid point, but still not convinced. So Prabhupada gave him the, threw the bomb at him. Prabhupada said, you don't need to eat stool to know that stool is bad. He got the point, because he definitely hadn't eat stool to know that stool is bad. We all know stool is bad, therefore we don't eat it. But none of us ate a stool. There may be a few exceptions, but none of us ate it. So like that. I hope that sheds some light on that. Can we say that Krishna karma is devotional service? No. So there's a difference between akarma. Akarma is devotional service. Sometimes the word may be used for devotional service, but generally nishkam karma and akarma, right, is what's related to devotional service, technically in Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. The word Krishna karma Prabhupada generally uses in terms of karma that Krishna administers. And there may be instances where Prabhupada is using Krishna karma as devotional service, activities for devotional service, so that in that context. So it has to be seen in context. But generally, when I use Krishna karma in this context, it's karma that's administered by Krishna, which becomes Krishna karma, not ordinary karma. So it's not ordinary karma, but it's karma that's delivered by Krishna. Shaman Prabhu says, just like Bhishma Dev on the deathbed, but fully Krishna conscious, was able to give sound advice, Srila Prabhupada also continued translating Srimad Bhagavatam and giving Bhaktivedanta purports practically daily despite advanced age, ill health, many headache, etc. And then also when he was departing, continually to give this knowledge with his last breath. Yes, Prabhupada said, dying on the battlefield with his last breath. This is why we accept Srila Prabhupada and trust all he says, for we know all the knowledge he gave is for the benefit of everyone, free from motive and personal ambition. I fully agree. Why would someone spend sleepless nights to give knowledge if it wasn't transcendental and beneficial? Jagannath Priya Professor Hare Krishna, thank you for today's beautiful class. You take us through every text so wonderfully. Thank you, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Veresh Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada was asked in his final stages if he had any incomplete work on this planet, and his answer was related to instilling Varnashram Dharma. Always wondered what he meant by this. This is clearly highlighted in this is clearly highlighted in this presentation. Yes, it's a huge, humongous task. Not an ordinary. Prabhupada said 50% of his work is undone. This is 50%. So it's a huge task. Bafana Prabhu, I do not intend to brag, but I feel so pleasant seeing people looking at the bead bag for chanting. Mine has Jagannath. It just feels so satisfactory that even seeing the face of Jagannath in the bag, I understand that's not enough, but can that be seen as partly broadcasting the Lord? Most definitely. What to talk about Jagannath? If you wear tilak and you walk, you wear dhoti and you walk, and people just gaze at you, they're getting purified. If they see a devotee, they get purified. You see the ropes of Lord Jagannath's chariot, you see the chariot, they get purified. Anything connected to the Lord, pure devotee, they get purified. That's all called agyata sukriti, unknown devotional credits. That's why if you go door to door, right, and you're selling calendars, devotional calendars, you keep the calendar open and you say, we're selling these calendars, and the Muslim says, no, I'm not interested. The Christian says, I'm not interested. Very good. They saw the picture for them to say not interested. That's agyata sukriti, unknown devotional credits. Prabhupada said, if somebody doesn't want a book, no problem. Tell them to touch it. They don't want a book, no problem. Smile. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. God bless. Smile. If they receive a smile, they reciprocate with a smile. Agyata Sukriti. You're in a queue, and the queue is long. So you tell the man behind you or the person or the lady behind you, please, you can come in front. And they come in front, they say, oh, you're a nice person, thank you very much. They greeted you, they thanked you. Agyata Sukriti, devotional credits. So the devotees are there to increase the credits, spiritual credits. And yes, it's satisfying. Mother Lash, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for Krishna Katha. Today's class was filled with irrefutable, ugly truths of the world or time that we currently live in. The universal form of the Lord is subtle. The universal form of the Lord is subtle or imaginary. And this reminds me of today's class, where we have a society form or Varnashram Dharma, which is subtle form of the head, body, feet, and society. Yes. So we're going to be covering the the universal form in the second canto and third canto. It's given there in detail. So yes, the subtle form, the Virat Rupa of the universe is there. It has many functions, many purposes, many reasons. It's an imaginary form of the Lord. So it's not real in that sense, but it does play an important role, both for focusing and also relating to matter, also in terms of the position of things where they are, right? So it does play a role in the structure of the universe, in terms of how the universe is functioning, in terms of how the souls in the universe advance from matter to spirit by focusing on matter related to the universe to advance, like for example, seeing the sun as the eyes of God. And therefore, when they meditate on the sun and the moon as eyes of God, they make advancement. So different facets are there, which we will cover in detail in the second and third canto. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback, comments, and questions. We will continue with this glorious discussion of Bhishma Dev, sharing his wisdom, and Prabhupada enlightening us through his Bhaktivedanta purports next week. Just a point, I mentioned that I'm going to share some vision on Chaitanya Love Academy. It's a little delay. We had some hiccups that we had to manage. So this week, so I didn't get time. I will let devotees know, or I'll create a video that I'll circulate. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Go Pramanande. Hari Hari.